Well, today's a Monday. I always find Monday's a little bit of a dry day when it comes to. It's either one or the other. It's either a really big news day or it's a bit of a slow start to the week. I feel like this week's a little bit apart from the Treaty Principles Bill oral submissions,
The,
which was great.
the first round, like we have
Yeah.
been building to this, and I must admit, at work, I had the live feed of people submitting, and I've watched a little bit of it since I got home, and yeah, it's weird watching the oral submissions, and
Mm,
I couldn't help contrast the I guess the basis of knowledge between the people that are for this bill and the people that are against it. It is an unbridgeable chasm uh, of,
yeah.
of, of between an extreme level of knowledge about what they're talking about and not.
I saw someone online liken it to academics and then vibes. I'm
Very much
like
so. Yeah,
actual like knowledge, academics, nuance, and philosophical things, and then it's just vibes.
yeah,
We
yeah.
think it'll
I
be
don't like it
fine.
when people call me racist, so I'm pretty sure I'm for this bill for some reason. Yeah, it really really weird. Um, it was watching the actual oral submissions part of submission here is always very very weird to me because it's
Mm,
everybody gets 10 minutes and that is supposed to include questions from
mm,
people on the committee, and just for such a time, I understand it. They've got thousands and thousands of people that have ticked the box saying, I want to speak on this. And they never have to do this. They had to cull out the list and decide who to who to listen to.
mm.
And that has just really sort of focused for me of like, how can you go in and talk about such an important thing and only have 10 minutes, including questions?
Do
It's
they,
it's
when you're
madness.
watching, do they actually ask questions?
Very occasionally when they have time, like they quite rigidly stuck to that 10-minute
Mm,
sort of presentation. And I mean, if you were someone that rocked up and you'd worked out what you're going to say and it's going to fill up all of the 10 minutes, well then there's no questions.
mm,
um I did notice, and I've done a little bit of digging on this. Hobson's pledge
mm,
submitted today,
mm-hmm.
and they tried to put the
Well, they
cat
took
amongst
someone
the
else's spot
pigeons.
because they let them.
Well, did they though? Did they?
Mm,
Because I mean, they got up into their submission and they immediately started playing the victim of like we're New Zealand's preeminent group representing all of these people on treaty issues, and we were never going to get given a spot, and it's only because of this other like-minded group volunteering to give up their spot that we were able to submit. And then right at the end, James Meagher, who's running the committee, goes, well, actually, we picked the list off people that responded
mm,
before the deadline, and Hobson's pledge didn't. You were
mm.
offered and you didn't respond. So I don't know who to believe there. My gut feeling is don't ever believe Hobson's pledge. So I'm
Yeah,
going to go with that.
yeah. I did see that he then backtracked on his you didn't respond to you did, but we'd already filled up all the submission by that point. So it was like a
Oh,
sorry, the
okay.
misunderstanding or misunderstanding. I don't know, but I feel like that's a technicality of like, if it was really this important to you, maybe you would have responded quickly.
Yeah, right. Yeah, your
Yeah.
whole organization is built for this. You should have
Yeah.
been sitting there like day one.
Like waiting.
Yeah, got it. Got the first slot.
We're in.
Fuck yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next to David Seymour. All right,
I
should
haven't
we
I haven't I haven't watched Seymour's presentation. I'm
I
sure it will
I
make
I
me
haven't seen
furious.
any of them, to be honest. I've
Yeah.
heard people's extractions of bits and pieces, and it sounds like overwhelmingly it was very yeah, like you say, it was more nuanced than academics and people actually having reasons behind,
Mm.
and also the impacts of it and uh, the implications of going forward. I obviously the things that came out of most of the lawyers, I think I appreciated the most because they're the ones who currently interpret the treaty and use it in law, as opposed to those who are perhaps a little more. I don't know. Was there? I feel like there was a few people on the opposing side who were also kind of like vibes, but maybe less so.
Yeah, I haven't seen too much of that. Like I think I've watched about 3, maybe 4 oral submissions. So I've watched Hobson's Pledge one.
Mm,
I watched a dude who was supportive of this bill beforehand, and he very
mm,
much came on as if like, well, I've got qualifications in 18th century history, blah 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 blah. And then didn't reference that at all ever again.
no.
And one of the he did leave time for questions, and
Mm,
again, I should have written down the name, but one of the questions that he got from one of the committee members, well, was basically trying to nail him down on where does the constitutional right for us to be in this country exist, and where does its power came from, and he very much squirming and trying to duck that question until he had to
mm.
admit, well, yeah, it comes from the treaty, and the committee member just went, got it, cool, that's all I need, thank you. Um, so yeah, and just people talking about the potential, the down the road effects of this. Like
Yeah,
it seems to me that the people that are pro this bill are very much sticking to like trying to lock this down and go, well, this
yeah.
means this and this means this and that means that it will always mean this. Whereas the people that are
Mm,
being more considerate of this, of like, well, things change, cultures and
mm,
society evolve, and this is why we have lawyers in the judiciary. Their whole job, like Parliament sets laws and that locks them into time. It hits pause on time. You know,
mm,
it was like you could it was illegal to be gay, and now we know
mm.
that's wrong.
Yeah,
And we
yeah.
knew that it was wrong before they changed the law, and
Mm,
it took the judiciary and legal challenge to change it. So I think
mm,
when David Singh was trying to chop the judiciary out of this whole process and go,
mm.
well, Parliament's the only people that can make laws, that is inherently dangerous. But they want
Yeah,
to lock it down in a legal framework in a debate club sort of fashion without considering that societies change and understanding of things change. And that's the danger with lawmaking.
yeah. I mean, it does seem a little bit hypocritical as well because ACT were the ones that brought forth the same sex marriage. As far as I'm
Mm,
aware, that was them, wasn't it? And they brought forth euthanasia, I believe, as well. That was their bill that they pushed. And then I guess in this sense, they're also wanting to do similar, in which they say, you know, society's changed, the landscape of New Zealand's changed, and that's kind of their backing behind why the treaty also needs to change, but in a way that doesn't reflect their other things of following society's changes and changing law to reflect that.
yeah,
So I always find them a little bit hypocritical when it's like you want to nail it down, but then you also understand that society's changed. So which one is it? You know, is it ever flowing and flexing, or is it this is the way it is, this is where it always should be?
yeah. And oh, this is a really good. Thank you, Chad. I was trying to get there. What do we think of Seymour bringing
Oh
Auschwitz up in his
jeez.
submission?
Oh.
I I haven't seen the exact quote. I had 4 people message me within about 5 minutes after he said it, going, "Oh, holy shit!" He's linked it to um, the abolition of slavery at Auschwitz. Um, shit, actually, one of
Wow.
those messages I think had the quote. If you give me 1 second, God, I post a lot of shit. I
That's
post a lot of shit
insane.
in a lot of different places, which makes it really difficult to find it when I need
Hmm,
to.
that's true. While you do that, I should probably do one of these. Is it
Oh,
one of
my
maybe
absolute
this
star
one?
of what I've seen on the submissions, Marilyn Waring's presentation is bang on the money. hers is really good, and the main quote that I have here is, "Equality is never achieved through equal treatment," and I think that's
Mm.
bang on.
Wow, that's well said. Oh, should we watch the news recap at least, and then we can
Yes, absolutely.
that might give some further context to what's going on. Starting with our favorite human being, said no one. Oh.
For the ACT leader, today was always going to be a war of words.
There will be a lot of people criticising your bill today. Are you ready for that?
Oh, look, I'm ready for people to be name-calling, abusing, all the rest. I've had it. I've got a thick skin.
As the bill's author, David Seymour had the first say.
The idea that there was two sovereign nations, I'm sorry, I don't subscribe to that.
It is a compact, an agreement between iwi Māori and the Crown.
Well, you could argue that there were two nations beforehand, but as soon as the treaty was signed, we have one nation.
All New Zealanders.
I don't agree with it in so many ways. Completely disregards it. Two people signed it. Completely disregards sovereignty.
This is the key part of the submission that I made, is that in every opportunity that he has had to talk about this bill, he hangs his hat on an utter falsehood. Like it's his first step out the gate, that it is an agreement between two races. And it isn't. It never has been. It's been an agreement between Hapu and Iwi and the Crown. What he's arguing is it's an agreement between the entirety of Māoridom and the entirety of white people, which it clearly is not. And he's completely writing off like, race-based stuff has never worked anywhere ever, which again is demonstratively false. Like there are a lot of examples where it didn't work, where it was absolutely used in a negative, and he wants your mind to go there. He wants your mind to go to Rhodesia or South Africa because apartheid bad. And this is where I point out that even though David Seymour is, of course, a rabid opponent of apartheid, he is also a rabid supporter of Israel, if you can collate those two things. But yes, in every public thing, he links to falsehoods. He predicates this on the exactly as if the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act does not exist. Because that's his other point, is that we must all be equal in front of the law, which we are because of the Bill of Rights. So his whole thing, like Article 1 of his treaty bill, runs in parallel and does exactly the same thing as the Bill of Rights Act. And he holds it up as like, this is why we got to get this squared away, because we're not equal in front of the law at the moment. It's bollocks.
Oh, let's hear from ye old Hobson's pledge then.
Should be equal before the law, no matter their skin colour, no matter what.
One nation.
All New Zealanders should be equal before the law, no matter their skin colour, no matter what when they arrived in the country.
Those opposing the bill say it's pure politics.
It's just a shameful race-based dog whistle to the uninformed and bigoted in this land to create populist political support. That's it.
This bill can only be described as a simple piece of fiction.
It's seeking to turn a fiction into legal fact.
The judiciary itself during this debate has come under scrutiny.
The behaviour of some of our senior judges suggests they think they are entitled to make law.
This King's Counsel calling out his profession.
One of their weapons is the undefined principles of the treaty.
The bill is misconceived, and this really is a case of much ado about nothing.
National's former treaty minister.
I love what he says next.
Suggesting it's farcical.
Parliament can legislate to provide that the earth is flat and so on. It doesn't make it flat.
Those who would replace liberal democracy with tribal sovereignty will create a racialized society. Apartheid.
Migrant communities today raised their concerns.
This bill, with all its flaws, especially distracts from the very real issues of social and economic inequality caused by colonization, white supremacy, Islamophobia, etc.
Multiculturalism is used to recruit Asians into a sinister anti-Māori agenda.
A government bill drawing attention from all corners.
Whatever else this coalition government achieves while it's in office, it is likely to be remembered for the unnecessary damage this bill has caused.
And it's not over yet.
Yeah. So it's been a big day in terms of the Treaty Principles Bill, and obviously I think they said 60 hours remaining, with another one coming up on Thursday. Sorry.
It's an absolute monster. I urge everybody to go and look at all of the things that Chris Finlayson has said today. Man has been dropping bombs on everything. He's a phenomenal minister. Like, this is one of the few times that I will cheerlead a former national MP. He did some amazing work with treaty settlements under Key's government. He has, I think, an innate and very deep understanding of what a government needs to do to move on the relationship with Māori. And I think this is the thing that everybody's missing is it's causing division. It's causing division. Well, why are we going backwards then to more division? Why are we not pushing through this? And I think you mentioned it ages ago, but in the chat, Disarray was saying, it's good to see you back too, by the way, Disarray.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's still there. What's the point? I think I'm going to paraphrase you. What is the point of all this? We know it's not progressing. And I think that is really key. Like, every party has said that they're not supporting it. So this is just the division and the fact that it's stirring people up. That is the purpose. That is the purpose. And it has always been very, very clear from David Seymour that his goal is a public initiated referendum. So if you can stir up enough groups that coalesce and pull in the same direction to initiate a citizens initiated referendum, well, guess what? This whole process, this ugly discussion that is based on a lot of ignorance, willful or otherwise, is just going to be part of our national debate for months, years. And it is just going to be this painful all the way through. It's going to cost millions of dollars worth of taxpayers' money, achieve nothing, and then he's going to find another way to do it again and do it again and do it again. And that is the part of his statement that I really want to highlight. His drawing, his being David Seymour, drawing comparison between the civil rights movement, the abolition of slavery, is, he said, it didn't go through the first time. People keep agitating for these things to happen. They were rejected by the law of the land. They tried again, they tried again, they tried again. That is the end game. So just because we'll kill this in a couple of months' time doesn't mean that it's gone.
And it's not like they haven't been successful before. I mean, the last time they tried this whole thing, it got tiny amount of submissions. I think it's been 3 attempts to try and get this type of thing through. And I guess the euthanasia bill is another one where it kept coming back, and eventually it went through. So there are examples of bills, not getting there and then eventually getting there. Unfortunately, the euthanasia one was his ACT's parties, but I feel like there was a different ACT though. The ACT now is a different ACT than what I've seen in the past, surely.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. ACT has
I don't
changed
remember
a
ACT
lot.
ever being this kind of concern. Like, I always remember them being, and maybe it's because they championed things like the same-sex marriage and euthanasia bill, that they were, which are quite progressive, well, very progressive when we put, especially the same-sex marriage when it came through. That was still quite early days. I think we beat America, didn't we, in getting that through
Yeah,
by
I
a
think
number of
that's
years.
right. Yep.
So I remember them as quite a progressive. It's always about the thinking about yourself and your own right. To exist in society and be free to do those things without, as long as it's not harming someone else. But I feel like it's gone in a very different direction since then.
And that's the danger with libertarian parties, is because it's very easy to be libertarian about some things. Like it's a natural place for, say, as you mentioned, same-sex marriage, for ACT to go, why is it up to the state to decide who you marry? That's a fair libertarian position, but by the same token, you don't get to the stage where they go, what people choose to consume recreationally is up to the state as well. That would be a libertarian position as well. It's like, if people want to fucking shoot up heroin or drink whiskey or smoke weed, why is the state in the position of deciding what's good and what's not? That would be a libertarian position. But libertarian parties, political parties, as soon as they get a sniff of power, are libertarian about some things, and then very right-wing reactionary law and order about a whole bunch of other things. So yeah, I feel like these things that they throw up sometimes are there. See, look, we are still libertarian. Ignore all of the other things. And I think the change in ACT goes hand in hand with David Seymour's purpose, which I think is an Atlas group tool, mouthpiece, that sort of thing, has changed that whole party.
Absolutely.
And with it being stacked with, again, lobbyists, mining lobbyists, tobacco lobbyists, gun lobbyists, you aren't going to get libertarian positions unless it's a bit of showboating.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I just wanted to point out as well that Andrew Little also spoke today. After what we got after Chris Finlayson's Earth is Flat comment, which I loved. That was so good. Another former minister, Andrew Little, said supporters and advocates of the bill had said it would rectify that there were not equal rights for all New Zealanders. Those comments imply or assume that rights are not presently equal or are not equally enforced or upheld, and that the treaty represents a source of inequality. That must be totally rejected, he said. Little said correcting wrongs did not create inequality. To deny the ability to uphold the terms of the treaty would itself be an act of inequality, and would make treaty rights secondary or inferior to any other legal rights, and would therefore make Māori unequal before the law. To the extent this bill claims to address that, it is not addressing anything at all. Andrew Little was reluctant to get into the politics of what had brought the legislation to the House, but rejected commentary that the debate was a waste of time. This is an important debate. What people say in the collective understanding amongst the nation about the treaty, I think, going to be very important. This time will end up being an important touchstone in our nation-building journey. Thoughts?
I think, I mean, if there's a silver lining on this whole shitty situation, I think there is a lot of talk about what the treaty means to people, and I think Māori are having a really good opportunity to say why, very strongly, why it's important to them, what has been fought for so strongly for so long. And I hope that through this whole ugly process, that there is more knowledge being dropped out there amongst people that were unaware of it. that there's more understanding of our country's history and the relationship between government and Māori, and what has gone wrong and what has been fought for. Now, I don't know if that is just incredibly naive of me, but the conversations that I have had with people, and I do try to bring it up as much as I possibly can, with people that aren't like political tragics, like ourselves and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What we call normal people.
Yeah, I found that out with my family in recent times, where I'm like, "Look at this, Nikki no boats." They're like, "Yeah." I'm
Yeah,
like, "Oh
you're not in our
no, I'm so deep.
clubhouse.
I'm deep in the source. No one gets it.
Yeah,
No."
it's when you start bringing it up in parties. Look, look at that wedding that I went to. Okay, this is tangent time. At that wedding that I went to, the groom is an old friend of mine, and he watches the show, and he doesn't always agree with me. I would say he is more centered, right? And he often has a lot of problems with exactly what David Seymour is hoping that he has problems with. The feeling that Māori are somehow special and above. But to his credit, he listens. He listens to the show. He doesn't necessarily agree with my point of view. He goes and listens to someone else. He listens to his friends. He listens to people that are different from him. Okay, and that is to his credit. And then there are people that are not like him, that are just like, well, this feels like bullshit because I never got any special handouts. And I want to go, were you systemically disadvantaged by the state over 150 years? That's the difference. You know, that's where things, when people talk about health inequality, you know, why is the reason that Māori have higher instances of respiratory disease? It's because they live in poor quality housing stock, that they don't have an equality of access to medicines or doctors. And then when they do interact with the health departments, maybe they don't get treated the same as Pākehā or non-Māori. And we know that because there's been studies done to show that there are systemic issues with racism. Systemic, not necessarily every nurse is a racist. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the system is set up along Western European frameworks. People don't work the same. And these are the things that we need to acknowledge. But a current government want to scrub that out of everything. And if we don't know that there's a problem, then there's not a problem, right? And this is the thing, this is foundational for this country. Who doesn't, like, everybody wants the good stuff. They want the healthcare. They want to know that if they have an interaction with the law or the courts, that everybody will be treated the same. And the answer to that is, what are our incarceration rates like? What is our lifespan like? What diseases are prevalent in our groups? You know, and there's two ways to look at it. You can look at it along racial lines, and ACT will get very, very uncomfortable about it because there's no good news there. But you could also look at it along the lines of, for lack of a better reason, class. Poorer people have poorer outcomes. And it just so happens that Venn diagram is very much still along those racial lines. Now, I'm a white person that had an okay lower middle class upbringing. You know, there were times that my parents were out of work and all of that sort of stuff. We lived in a state house. I went to a state school up the road, that sort of thing. I always had food in my belly. Now, it might not have been great food, but, you know, I could always have a cheese sandwich because it was the 80s and cheese was cheap.
Was it plastic cheese too?
And no, it was good cheese because you didn't export it. It was all
good.
for us. This country's trash. And like, if you came from, like, I could say some of my friends had a better upbringing. They lived in bigger houses. They had nicer things. And it would be very easy for someone to go, Well, nothing's been given to me.
Hmm.
So why should something be given to somebody else? Just because you didn't have it as bad as someone else doesn't mean that they have to suffer for it as well. I mean, I've mentioned on the show a couple of times in my interaction with law enforcement, one of the things that I have had is diversion, which you're only supposed to have twice. And I guess because I'm a white guy, because that is what happens. They've gone, it's just japes. But I know that if I was browner or my name was Rangi, maybe that interaction with the police would have gone very, very differently. And it wouldn't have been just japes. It would have been being in an enclosed yard, breaking and entering and theft. Let's stack it all up and put it in court. And I don't get diversion because it was never offered. And now this is something that has been shown to happen time and time again, that diversion gets used more for white people. And this is what it all comes at. If we don't look at the ugly stuff, we can't fix it. And it hinges on everything.
I think that's the thing that always annoys me with the pinnacle of this whole thing is that he doesn't want to look. Seymour doesn't want to look back, and he's like, "Oh, that was the past. Things are much better now. We've fixed everything, so let's move forward to this next generation." But a lot of things in society do require nuance and longevity, and it's the stacking of the pieces. I mean, that for me was always it, and I've said it a few times. I didn't get it until I got it, until all the pieces in the puzzle started to fit together. I started to understand how someone different to me ended up in a different situation, and how I have privileges in certain circumstances which have led me to other situations. And you just, until you get that, it's really, I understand why people go, "Oh, why do they get more than me?" Or why do they just, why I've worked hard and I've gotten somewhere, why do they get a free ride or a free pass? Because it may seem that way, but you have to also understand the nuance of who you are and who they are, the situations that led to where they are now today, the socioeconomic history, all of it. It all has impacting event. It all piles up.
Flow on, it cascades. Like I urge anyone that's wanting to understand why this is so important for especially North Island iwi and hapu, is read up on the New Zealand wars. Read up on what happened there and what the Crown did, and the people advocating for war against the Māori, and then look at the value of that land. Look at what has happened to it. We're an agricultural nation. We have exported tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of agriculture to the world. People have, family farms and that sort of dairy farming, how much that is worth. And look at how much of it sits on stolen Māori land and wonder why people are pissed about it. I've got a meme that I saw today that speaks to so many things, but I think very much this as well. And I'm going to read it for the guys on the audio podcast. Me, emerging from a tank that I've driven through your house. Now is a time for healing. We could use divisive words such as grandmother and crushed and dead, but I would rather get down to the work of mending this badly divided house. No, I mean, I'd rather you get down to that work. I have a tank to drive. It would be a mistake to investigate who drove a tank through whose house. That sort of rank partisan vindictiveness would only divide our fractured unity and would lead to further tanks. And I think through my dramatic reading, if you could imagine that in David Seymour's voice, it works really well. And we have been seeing that for the last year. But yeah, this idea of suddenly we're going to draw a line in the sand and we're all equal is just farcical. It's like starting a running race where we get better gear, a slight downhill grade, and a 10-minute start.
Yeah,
it's just laughable.
Yeah, it's the difference between equality and equity. And if you understand equity, you understand that not everyone starts at the same starting line.
Hobson's
You gotta
pledge
help people to
submission.
get to the same starting line before we can go.
Hobson's pledge submission. Their lawyer, who looks like he's come straight from the set of American History X, he actually argued that actually there's part of this that we don't agree with, and it's the word equity. We want to
Yeah.
get rid of that. They had a real problem
1
with
and 3
equity.
is fine. Number 2
Yeah.
is no, we can't do number 2.
No. Yeah, just laughable. But yeah, as far as someone that has been just talking absolute truth and is an absolute powerhouse on treaty issues, Chris Finlayson, the man needs, I don't know what honours he's been given, but he needs more.
He was the one that got kicked out and replaced with someone else, right, during this term. Was it him?
I'm
someone
not
else?
100% sure. I just remember from Key's government, like there's a lot of things that I can say about Key's government, but one of the things that is oddly satisfying about Key's government is they managed to do some really good work resolving treaty issues, and Chris Finlayson was a big part of that, and has been very vocal after that the only way to resolve these issues is to work together, which is just such an out the gate woke mind virus thing to say. Why would we work together? But yeah, it's just so funny when you look at the conversations that we're having now, and then listen to him and go, oh, sorry, he was with who? National? What? It's remarkable to look back and see the difference in our debate. And with all things, we need to remember that the only reason we're having this debate is because Luxon is a poor negotiator. He is bad at this. He's admitted that it wasn't even a bottom line as far as the negotiations with ACT goes. So he owns this. He owns this whole bag. As horrible as David Seymour is, Luxon brought him to the party.
Yeah, he definitely committed some political suicide with this whole thing. I don't know who was in the negotiating room with him. Was it literally just the three of them? Peters was sitting there like,
there was a fourth thing. There was a big fucking clock that Luxon was looking at all times. Like, come on, guys, we're going to get this wrapped up. I want to be the big negotiator.
I got a government, yeah.
And he had Winston,
I said I could do this.
Absolute pro at negotiating, and David Seymour, who's just pleased to be invited. But look, if this is what we got with it not being a bottom line, my concern is next election, with the increased leverage that Seymour has, and knowing that he was able to get this far with it not being a bottom line. And with the comments that he said of going, hey, look, I might not get it through this time, but I'll be back. If he's in a position of negotiating again, if the left don't get their shit together and motivate their voters to really hit the streets this time round, then maybe David Seymour's back in that negotiating room, and maybe a referendum is a bottom line this time.
And I wouldn't be surprised, and it's very likely, possibly, I don't know, very likely, there is a possibility that Peters is not in that room, and that ACT and National could do it, the two of them, which means there's one less party to negotiate with, but one less party who might be a little bit more, I don't know, Peters is what he is, but I feel like he is at least a little bit more moderate. Or like he's reasonable in some.
Go together.
No, I mean, isn't he's a little bit more? He's smarter. Like this is not something he would throw on the table for sure. He would do it in different ways, but
he was better at politics because he was there when it was invented. It wasn't politics before Winston Peters turned up. He was there with it first. But I mean, you look at Peters' history of being involved in coalition governments and the work that he has. That yes, he is a declining entity. But even in this state, I would dread trying to negotiate anything with him.
Hmm.
I think when you're talking about Seymour and Luxon and Winston, the first two are going into that battle with a butter knife, and Winston's holding a minigun from a prepared defensive position. It just it doesn't work.
Yeah, good old Winston. But I fear what's going to happen with the next election. I'm 50-50 of what's going to happen. I obviously not 50-50 of what I want to happen, but I don't know. Is the left going to pull through? Can we do it, or is it like, oh, people don't care enough?
So isn't that a horrible? Well, it's both a horrible and a powerful place to be. I don't want anybody on the left to feel complacent. I don't want anybody on the left to go, well, this government is so obviously bad. They're terrible. They're doing terrible, terrible things that me and all my friends don't like. Everybody I talk to agrees that they're horrible. And they're poor politicians and they're doing bad things and they're unlikable. So they're going to lose. So I don't need to really do anything. I think the whole thing of like, no, because we were wrong last time. And we need to start now, a year ago. Right, exactly what BHN has done. It's like, oh shit, we lost that election. We better fucking buckle in. Nobody can be complacent. And we've got a lot of activity. Like the treaty submissions bill, they have spoken about the level of submissions. There were more submissions for this than there are usually submissions in total for every bill for an entire year. This is important to people. People are motivated. People are activated. And there's a lot of flow-on conversations about that, about other bills that are just as dangerous. And I think that thing of activating people and people finding like-minded groups and, hey, I've never really been involved in politics before, but this seems really important. Maybe I should. It's about finding communities and bringing people together and all of those things that traditionally the left is supposed to be really, really good at. We need to bring people with us, which is also something the left can sometimes be very, very bad at. The analysis of people and personalities, and they must hit every tick box and get everything right. And if they're wrong on one particular thing, then we throw the whole thing out. The what is it? The perfection is the biggest
Perfection
enemy.
is the enemy of good, and done is better than perfect. Those are the two.
And we've seen that here with this show. Like we talked about it before. We've interviewed someone, we pissed a whole lot of people off, and they're like, "We're never doing anything to do with you again." You know, that whole aspect of it. You know, we want
as if people
Labour
aren't multi-layered and multifaceted. With, you know,
like, and we do that to our political parties, right? We want Labour to be really, really left, and I'm not going to stop doing that. I'm not going to stop agitating for that. But I also know they're not going to be that. They're not going to be what I want them to be, right? But isn't that good that Labour's not my only choice? I can still go, I would rather Labour be the bigger party, the major party of a left coalition that wins the election. You know, you don't have to sit there and go, well, they're fucking terrible at everything because they're not as militantly left as I am. That is what I am talking about. We need to bring as many people with you. And if you're rabidly Te Pāti Māori or rabidly Green for their hardest, most left-wing policies, and it makes your friend uncomfortable, then that is fine, as long as your friend is fine with going Labour, you know, or something like that. Bring them some of the way along. Radicalize them over a period of years by getting them to watch a podcast called BHN 4 nights a week, 5 nights a week, even 9 till 5 weekdays, because that's how we win.